much full. So everyone, there's a sign-in sheet going around. Sign in. If we have if there's too many people and not enough people to fit in this class, we'll move over to Okay, so how many of you know nothing about the MCAT?
Not much.
How many of you are kind of familiar with the MCAT? Like what's on it and like what you have to do to study? And how many of you have studied for the MCAT already? How many of you have taken the MCAT? You've taken the MCAT?
Yeah.
Okay. So like one person's taken. Okay. So how many of you are sophomores?
Like just starting sophomore?
Yeah, just starting sophomores. So how many of you are juniors? And seniors? How many of you have graduated? How many of you have been out of school for more than 4 years? Okay, that's good. So I recommend, I think the ideal time to take this exam is right after your sophomore year, because that's when you've finished all of the material and it's going to be the most fresh, so you don't have to worry about mastering the material again. If you haven't taken physics, if you have no idea what physics is, you haven't taken AP physics, you haven't taken college physics, you haven't taken chemistry, OChem is okay. You can get around not taking OChem, because with the concepts that you have to know for OChem are very basic. But you definitely need to have taken some physics at some time and be very comfortable with physics. And you definitely have to have taken chemistry, and you definitely have to have taken biology. So one of the great things about this class, and the reason why my students are so successful, is I teach the class at a fairly high level. Because I teach this class to UCSD students, and I designed the class for UCSD students. And most UCSD students are very bright and competitive people, and that's the level that I teach it at. So if you already have a handicap, so that this class is going to be challenging for very smart, very motivated people. And if you already have a handicap, it's not going to be a very you're not going to really enjoy this class. So you're welcome to stick around. You're welcome to take this class. You may benefit from it, but this is a lot of work. The class is a lot of work. Yeah.
So you said it's a 30-hour per week commitment?
I mean, it matters. I mean, it's as much as you want to get out of it. When do you want to take the MCAT?
January.
January, then it's going to be 30 hours a week. Yeah. Yeah. If you're serious, you want to get a score that gets you in the medical school, right? So then 30 hours a week.
I'm not really sure what I'm getting into, but I haven't taken 22 units this quarter, so.
Oh yeah, you don't want to take this class for sure.
Okay.
Absolutely 100% don't take it.
Okay, so I'll just stick around for the rest of the day and then I'll.
Yeah. Yeah, you can take it later.
Yeah.
I mean, you can stick around in class, but 22 units, yeah, that's a really bad idea.
Wait, can we still take it later for free?
Man, I don't know what the policy is for that. They said something about if you drop it, you don't get another free one or something. So I don't really deal with any of that, so I don't really know. But maybe if you drop it today, then it's okay. And I think she's still in the office. But I think they said something if you drop the course, you don't get another free class or something. Okay, so hopefully you all want to go to medical school, because this class doesn't teach you any marketable skills. It's just this class is meant to increase your MCAT score, and you need a high MCAT score to get into medical school. So let's talk about a little bit about medical school admissions. So I sent you this handout. So I sent you guys all, you guys can sign in. Anybody still need the sign-in sheet? Okay, just pass it around. I sent you all an email this morning. One of the emails is this handout. And you hear a lot of opinions about what medical school admissions care about, right? There's all this anecdotal evidence. People say different things. So the AMC actually did a study, and they called all the admissions committees in the country, and they asked them what's important, what's important for medical school admissions. And this is the results of that study. So these are high importance, medium importance, and then there's low importance. So high importance, MCAT score. MCAT score is one of the most. Okay, the way that I like to think about the MCAT is it doesn't get you into medical school. Having a 45 alone is not going to get you into medical school, but having a 25 will keep you out for sure. It doesn't get you in, but it'll definitely keep you out. If your score is too low, you're not going to get into medical school. But if it doesn't matter how high it's not sufficient. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. So I don't know the details of every school's admissions policies, but I know UCSD's fairly well. And I know UCSD's is very quantitative. So they assign every part of your application a number. They assign your GPA a number, they assign your MCAT score number, they assign your extracurriculars, your personal statement, your letters of rec a number. And I know that the MCAT score is worth more than your undergraduate GPA. So meaning this one test you take 4.5 hours for one day is worth more than everything you do for 4 years as an undergraduate. So this is a fairly important exam. So it's a fairly important exam. So it's ranked as a high importance among most medical school admissions committees. So let's take a look at like what score would you need in order to have a competitive chance of getting into medical school? Okay, so this is also published by the AMC. It's statistics on medical school admissions. So on this axis is GPAs, on this axis is MCAT scores. And you can see there's a fairly strong correlation with your MCAT score and your probability. This row here is the acceptance rate, right? So the probability of getting accepted. So there's a fairly strong correlation in the probability of getting accepted and your MCAT score, right? But like even with 39 MCAT scores and 4.0 GPAs, there's still no guarantees, right? Still like you have a 90% chance of being accepted. So the way I would use this table is find your GPA, and say like you're in a 3.6 to 3.79 range, and ask yourself, okay, what MCAT score do I need in order to have a reasonable chance of getting accepted? Here's another chair. Let me just throw that in somewhere. So what MCAT score and GPA would I need? What MCAT score would I need to have a reasonable chance of getting accepted? So for my students, I generally like to get them in the 70% chance range. Meaning like, I don't think it's really worth doing all of this trouble if you don't have like a 70% chance of getting accepted to medical school. Like if you're like at a 3.2 and the highest MCAT score is like a 27 to 29, I wouldn't bother applying because it's just so much work. Applying is so much work, and it's just like costs a lot of money, it takes a lot of work, and you have a 25% chance of being accepted. It's pretty low. Like I like to have my students in around at 70%. So you have to ask yourself, okay, what score do I need to be at least like 50%? This is the national average. So half the people who apply get accepted. So pretty much half the people who apply, less than half of the people who apply, never get accepted anywhere ever. So you want to be a little bit above the national average. I think ideally you want to be a little bit above the national average. So you guys are all, I'm assigning a diagnostic exam today. And it's going to give you an idea of what your starting point is. So on average, so the average starting point is about a 22. So the average starting point in the UCSD classes is so that'll give you an idea of where you're starting, like relative to the average UCSD student. So if you're below a 22, you're a little bit below average, and if you're above 22, you're starting a little bit above average. So the average score increase so that, like if I just polled all of you in the beginning, the average score increase is 5 to 6 points. For people who actually stay through the whole program and do all the homework and then take the exam, the average scoring, so if you study 300 plus hours, the average score increase is 9 to 10 points. Plus increase. Okay, so if you're willing to commit to studying for 300 hours, a reasonable expectation is 9 points. If you're not really willing to commit to studying 300 hours, a reasonable expectation is 5 points, a 5-point score increase. The highest score increase I've ever seen in this class, so you have to ask yourself like what's reasonable. So the highest score increase I've ever seen is 15 points. So if your starting score, so say your starting score is like a 16, and your GPA is like a 3.3, well, if you're like the anomaly and you have the highest score ever, then you have a 40% chance of being accepted. So I want you to have realistic expectations because this is a huge time commitment. If you're serious about getting a high score on the MCAT, this is a 300-hour time commitment. Or 300. So people think I'm exaggerating, and if you talk to people who have gotten decent scores in the 30 or above range, this is what they put in. So people who get in the high 30s, people who get in 36 or above, they're usually putting in 400 hours or more. So my students who are getting in the 40 range, they're putting in 400 hours. They're doing 20 to 30 practice. So if you want a 40 plus score, this is 400. 400 plus hours of studying. This is 20 to 30 practice exams. So this is a huge commitment. So why is this test so difficult? Why do you have to put so many hours? So I've taught every exam. I've taught every exam except the LSAT. I've taught the DAT for dental school. I've taught the OAT for optometry school, the PCAT for pharmacy school. There's more that I can't remember. But I've taught GRE, GMAT. I've taught them all except LSAT. The MCAT is by far the hardest. It is it's way harder than any other. You can study for 2 weeks and get an okay GRE score. You can study for a month and get an okay DAT score. You need to study at least 3 to 4 months in order to get 3 to 4 months of full-time studying to get a decent, an adequate MCAT score. And why is it? Why is it so difficult? It's the nature of the people you're competing against. So you guys are pre-meds, you know what pre-meds are like, right? So the reason that this test is so difficult is the people who take it are just crazy, right? They just they're willing to do this. They're masochistic. They're willing to suffer to get into medical school. Dental students don't do that. Dental students, they're not willing to suffer for a DAT score. It's just a different personality. So these are the people you're competing against. So you know what pre-meds are like. They're some of the most intelligent, competitive students on campus, and they've people who take the exam. Nobody takes the MCAT without putting a lot of time into studying. They study 300 hours, and this is what it means to get a 30. Just a second. To get a 30, you're scoring in the 75th to 80th percentile. So I'm sure you guys all took the SATs and sure you guys scored all in the 90th percentile. But these are among pre-meds that have studied for 300 hours. So in order to get a 30, you need to have scored in the top 20th percentile of very, very smart people who are very, very motivated and who have generally put in 300 hours of studying. So getting a 30 is not easy. So a lot of people dismiss a 30 because it's the minimum score you need to get into medical school. Very, very smart, hardworking people struggle to get a 30. So if you looked at that graph and you need to get a 39 to be competitive for medical school, a 39 is in the 99th percentile, meaning you need to score in the top 1 percentile of very, very motivated, intelligent people. So it's very hard. So this is not this is something that you need to decide in the beginning that you're willing to commit to, because doing 150 hours of studying is not going to get anyone anywhere. So it takes at least 300 hours of studying. So it usually takes so if you want to ask yourself how much time does it take to get the score that you need, it's about 30 hours per point. So for every point that you need in a score increase, it's about 30 hours of studying. Or it's a week, or it's about 30 hours per week of full-time study. So it's not easy. So one of the hardest parts of studying for the MCAT, one of the hardest parts of taking the MCAT in general, is having the motivation to study. So this is not a test of intelligence. It's not. So what a lot of people assume is that they're really smart people. They got really good grades. The MCAT should be pretty easy. It's not a test of intelligence. It's a test of your ability to take this specific exam. It's a specific skill that you develop. And you develop this skill by doing a lot of practice problems and a lot of work. So this is really a test of how much time you're willing to put in. Because there's more a correlation with how much you study and how much practice you do and how many practice tests you do than your SAT scores or your general intelligence. So this is really a test of, in which I think it's like a good test of, and which I think it's like a legitimate test of, is how badly you want to go to medical school. So so if you're a sophomore and you're kind of thinking like, maybe I'll go to medical school, like this is probably not like a good efficient use of your time, because it's hard, it's not easy. So how do you get motivated? So one of the first things you should do is start planning on how to deal with stress, because the MCAT has a way of like breaking down your confidence, because it's just your scores go up very slowly. You never feel like you completely have mastered the content. The tests are very tricky, so it has a way of breaking down your confidence. So you have to have plans on like making yourself feel good about yourself during this next 3 to 4 months, how to tolerate stress, and staying motivated. So you want to like recruit your friends and family, tell them that, you know, I plan on studying for 300 hours over the next 3 to 4 months. Try to keep me on track. Try to keep me motivated. I highly recommend exercise. So one of the few reasons I thought I was very successful the first time I took my exam was because I was at the time I was an athlete, so I was in really good like cardiovascular shape, I guess. So I had a very high tolerance to stress. And like I approached studying for the MCAT the way like I would train for like a sport. And like exercising is not only going to help you deal with stress, but it's going to help your mind work more efficiently, which is really important for the MCAT. So I tell my students this every year, especially my one-on-one students. I notice that this has a significant effect on their score. And I highly recommend that you consider exercise as part of your studying, like regular exercise as part of your studying for the MCAT. Barriers to success. Okay, if you have a learning disability, that's kind of good news for the MCAT. They give you 50% extra time. The MCAT will give if you have a diagnosed learning disability, a history like ADD, test taking anxiety, they'll give you 50% additional time, which is a lot, because time is like a big issue for the MCAT. But you need to apply for this at least 3 months in advance. In addition, if you have test taking anxiety or general problems taking standardized exams, the UCSD CAPS program has programs for, yeah.
I was just wondering, like, if like the schools see it, like
okay, that's the thing.
Time.
You get an asterisk. They don't know what the asterisk means. Sometimes the asterisk means that they let you use earplugs, for example. But it doesn't say what they gave you, but you get an asterisk by your score. And they don't tell you what the schools don't know what the asterisk means. It just means that you took the MCAT under non-standard conditions. So that all it says means is you took it under non-standard conditions. And yeah, but it could be like if you ask to use earplugs, then you get an asterisk. So that's, yeah. So English deficiencies. So if English is your second language and you feel that you really haven't mastered English, you don't want to attempt the MCAT, because the MCAT requires like a lot of pretty like sophisticated analysis of passages. You have to be able to, you know, read English at a very comfortable level, at a high level. So this is something you want to address first before tackling the MCAT, because an English deficiency will seriously sink your score. And when we see more of the MCAT, when we see like the structure of the MCAT and the passages, you'll realize like how important this is, your ability to read critically. And this is a major issue for most UCSD students, having too many outside commitments. So you know, most UCSD pre-meds are like hardcore overachievers, and they don't realize like this is not a test of intelligence. You know, they're thinking, you know, I'm a really smart person. I get really good grades, and they assume this is a test of intelligence. And by the time they realize like how competitive this exam is, it's generally too late. This is something, you know, like I said, people study for 300 hours for this exam. If you have more than 25 hours of outside commitments, you're not going to be able to, and you plan on taking this exam in January, for example, that's not going to work. If you are doing a full course load of difficult classes and you plan on taking the MCAT in January, that's not going to work either. It's just not going to work. You're not going to be able to commit the necessary time. So if you plan on taking the MCAT in 4 months, that really needs to be your priority for 4 months. So you want to study for 4 months, and that's something you're going to be doing for, you know, it's like your full-time job, and everything else is extra. So I would not take a full load. If you can, I would drop any of your research, volunteering, clinical work, or clubs for at least 3 to 4 months. If you're doing research or if you're volunteering in a hospital, people know that the MCAT is very competitive. And if you tell like your PI in the lab or a doctor you're working with, hey, I'm going to study for the MCAT, I can't come to the lab for a while, they know this is a hard test. So they know that people spend a lot of time studying. So they understand that it needs to be made a priority. But this is really important. This is what sinks people's score all the time. Too many outside commitments. The ideal is around 20 hours, maximum. It's good to have something outside of the MCAT because, like I said, the MCAT kind of breaks down your confidence. And if you're doing nothing but the MCAT, you're going to get a little depressed. So it's good to have something outside of the MCAT, but you don't want to have too many outside commitments because that's what generally sinks people's scores. So I already said a reasonable score improvement if you studied for 300 hours is 9 points. 21, 22 under diagnostic. So I went from like a 24 to a 39. But like, so I studied after my sophomore year. I studied for like 10 weeks. But that 10 weeks probably like took like 2 years off my life. So I studied, I took the MCAT when it was like an 8-hour test, when it was originally an 8-hour test. And I took like probably 15 exams. So, 15 times 8, that's 120 hours of just taking practice tests. In addition to all the studying and reviewing the practice tests. So, it was about 300 to 400 hours of studying. And that's what it takes to see like 15-point increase is like pretty significant. Okay, let's look at the other unit. Let's talk a little bit about the class. So for the syllabus. Okay, so class is from 12:40 to 5. So there's a lot of content to cover for the MCAT, and there's only we only have 4.5 hours to do it in this class. So what I'm doing is I'm adding additional optional weekday sessions from 7 p.m. to 8:40 on Friday. And during these additional weekday sessions, we're going to be focusing on biology. So we're not going to be doing biology in the main 4.5 hour section, because I find that most of you guys, are biology majors, you feel fairly comfortable with biology, and your weaknesses are generally verbal, physical sciences, and a little bit of vochem. So we're going to be focusing on that in your class, and this is going to be supplemental. If you feel that you could, I highly recommend attending, but if you can't attend, you're still going to get the notes, and you can just review those on your own. I also have office hours. My office hours are on Skype. They're from 9 a.m. to 12 a.m. on Sunday. This is my Skype username. Feel free to add me in advance. I have an online whiteboard so that we can work through problems together. I find people actually show up if they don't have to drive somewhere. So, okay, let's talk. So, in this class, we're going to go over the content. I'm going to be reviewing the content necessary for the MCAT. But I'm also going to help you develop critical thinking skills. So, I find for the MCAT, just lecturing isn't very valuable for students. Because you've already been lectured this stuff at least once, right? Everybody's taken physics and chemistry and bio, OChem. So you've already been lectured this stuff once. So mostly we're going to be working through problems together. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be sending you handouts probably a week before, around a week before class. And you're going to fill out those handouts. So you're going to do the reading, you're going to fill out the handouts, and instead of me lecturing the material, I'm going to be asking you guys questions, and I'll be bringing you guys up to answer questions on the board, to fill in blanks. So the handouts are going to be the notes, but there's going to be blanks in the handouts. So there's going to be questions throughout the notes. And you have to come to a class having already answered the questions in the handouts, and having already had a familiarity with the questions. So it's not, like I said, I don't think it's very efficient to just lecture the content to you. I think a more efficient use of this time is to apply this content to difficult questions and help you learn the critical thinking skills that are necessary to be successful for the MCAT. So I'll be assigning you guys to groups. I'm going to be assigning you guys to groups based on your practice MCAT score and based on some biographical information. I'm going to send out a poll to get some biographic information about you guys. And what I'm going to be doing is, like I said, I'll give you guys a handout a week before, and you'll come up as a group. You'll be answering the questions in the handouts, and when there's some deficiencies in your background, I'll be doing a little bit of lecturing to fill in those deficiencies. So these are the required texts. So these are the minimum texts required in order to be able to follow the class. If you're serious about getting a decent MCAT score, you should consider these required as well. But these are just enough to follow the class, but to get a serious MCAT score, you should get all of these materials as well. So these are all Princeton Review books. They're just so, the reason I like Princeton Review is they kind of teach through a Socratic method in that when they're presenting material within the chapter, they're always asking questions. So it's not just about memorizing the material, it's about thinking about the material critically, and that's what's important for the MCAT. So one, they're presenting the content Socratically. Two, they give you lots of practice content. They give you lots of practice questions within the book. Three, these books include like an online account. And I'll show you guys how to sign up for that online account later. So I also recommend getting the 8 AMC practice exams at 8@emcat.com. If you email A Savage, the HMP3 advisor at ucsd.edu, she can get you a discount on these exams. So these exams are usually like $250. She gets you a pretty significant discount. Like I think it's like around 40%, around a 40% discount. So these are definitely like, you should definitely get these. So these Princeton Review workbooks are why you spend $2,400 to take Princeton Review. This is like, these books are gold. So pretty much what they are is they're really fat books with nothing but practice questions and practice passages. And the MCAT is a skill. And the way you develop a skill, yeah, you use a little bit of strategy and you use some techniques which I'm going to teach you in class, but mostly you develop a skill by doing practice. So that's why these books are gold. So you want to get your hands on these books. The problem with these books is you need to they're not commercially available. So Princeton Review doesn't sell them to the public. But you can find them like on Craigslist. You can find them used on Craigslist. This MCATpack@gmail.com is, he sells used MCAT books. My students have been able to find books from him in the past. So it's worth contacting him as well. The third reason that I've chosen these books is you can find them all free online. So you can find PDFs of all these books free online. I'm not going to tell you where to find them, but like, yeah, you can find all of these books free online. These workbooks are you can generally find these. It's going to take a little bit more work to find these free online. These practice tests you have to pay for. Exam Cracker Audio Osmosis, these are MP3s. So these are MP3s of lectures. So they pretty much lecture all the content on the MCAT. So what I would use these for is like whenever I was at the gym, whenever I was driving, whenever I was walking, like at night, I would just play these lectures and I would always listen to them. So they just kind of reinforce the basic content for the exam. The official MCAT self-assessment package is really great because it's published by AAMC. All it includes is like practice passages and questions. The reason that, so you should definitely get 1 through 4. 5 is kind of an option, kind of optional. The reason I think this is optional is it's pretty expensive. It's like $250. This would probably be like around $100. This book would probably be around $40. Each of these books are probably around $25 each. So, you know, studying for the MCAT is already like a monetary commitment, right? So not only is it going to commit some of your time, you know, this is a competitive exam, you don't want to go cheap. And this is really the minimum. This is where you start. So after you finish this class, if you want to do more, then there's a lot more stuff I can recommend. But this is like the absolute minimum, like up to 4, to get like a competitive score on the MCAT, if you're serious about getting a competitive score. So attendance. You have to attend this session, so that's not an issue for you guys, or you'll get dropped. If you miss more than 2 Saturday review sessions, you'll also get dropped from the course. So all that means is you're welcome to keep coming to class, but I'm just not going to send you any handouts anymore. And the reason I'm going to do that is not because like they pay me based on attendance, but it's mostly to motivate you guys to come to class. Because it's really difficult to sit for 4.5 hours in like a lecture, so you need something to motivate you. So if you skip 3 sessions, then you're going to get dropped. You can keep coming to class, I just won't send you any handouts. Okay. So let's talk about like what you're going to be doing every week. Okay, before class, you're going to read the chapter. You're going to complete the handouts with your group. You're going to finish all in-chapter questions and end-of-chapter questions and passages. So, for example, like for Friday, I'm assigning biochemistry and cellular respiration, chapter 2. So you're going to read that chapter. You're going to do all the questions within the chapter. At the end of the chapter, there's more questions, and there's also a passage. We'll talk about what passages are for those of you who are not familiar with the exam a little later. So you're going to do the reading and the practice questions before coming to class, and finish the handouts before coming to class. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, like if we're only doing the stuff you assign, how many hours per week do you think
It's
that?
going to be like 20 to 30 hours. Yeah.
from your stuff.
Yeah, this is like a full time. If you like, well, say you don't want to take it in January. Say your plan is to take it in 6 months. Say your plan is to take it in 6 months. We'll do all the before class stuff, all the stuff that says before class. You want to do all of those, and just save this stuff for like winter quarter. So you save all the after class stuff for winter quarter. So at least you get like some exposure to the content, you develop some familiarity with the content. You haven't mastered it yet, and that would be like a 6 month schedule instead of like a 4 month schedule. So okay, so then we're gonna review the material in class. So we're gonna work through problems. We're gonna apply the material. We're gonna work through problems. We're gonna work through passages, and I'll show you like how to apply the material to like answer questions. Do you have a question? No, sorry. So that will be the second time you've seen the content. You've seen it on your own before class. We're going to work through it together in class. And then after class, you're going to do more questions. You're going to do more practice to master the material and to master the problem solving skills. So you're going to review the notes. One of the good things about this class is the handouts I give you are comprehensive, meaning that everything that you're going to see on the MCAT is going to be in the handouts I give you. So you're not going to have to like study, you won't have to use your textbooks once you have read it the first time. Since I've been teaching this for like 7 years. I taught for Princeton Review, I taught for Kaplan, I taught for Exam Crackers. I've used the Berkeley Review books. I've used the Gold Standard book. I've been exposed to every source of information on the MCAT. So my notes is kind of like a hybrid of everything. So I've taken enough tests to know what's relevant and what's not relevant. And that's really like the best resource of my class, and what my students find very valuable is my notes. Because they're comprehensive and you can study from them and be exposed to everything you need to know for the MCAT. So the other great thing about the Princeton Review is they come with online material. So I sent you how to set up a Princeton Review account in this email as well. So you go to princetonreview.com, and each of these books has an ISBN number. It says register books. You enter the ISBN number in order to register your books. And once you've registered your books, you have access to the online content. So these are just more questions and more passages, and then you get a couple practice tests with that as well. So that's another reason why I really like these books, because it comes with a lot of practice questions, and that's how you really see a significant score increase is by doing practice. So that's what you're doing after class. So after class, you're going to review the notes, finish the online questions on your account, and passages are also on your account, and workbook questions. So you'll notice for every chapter, I also assign workbook questions. So these are out of these workbook questions, these workbooks that I highly recommend. And these are just another source of practice questions. So when I say highly recommend, if you're really serious about getting a high score, you should definitely get the workbooks, because that's how you increase your score. Okay, let's talk about this week's homework. Okay, first thing you want to do is buy class material. So you need to take, I usually assign the practice exam earlier, but like I said, most people enrolled in like Thursday and Friday, so I wasn't able to do that. So I want you to take your practice exam, the Princeton Review practice exam, here is a link, by Monday. Because I'm going to be assigning you guys to groups this week, and I need to know your starting point in order to assign you guys to groups. So this is just a practice MCAT, it's a full-length practice exam. It'll give you an idea of what your starting score is, and then it'll give you a realistic expectations of where you can go from there. So have this done by Monday. This is free. You don't even need an account for this. You just like click on this link and you can take it online. So and then send me a screenshot of your scores. Just email it to me. This is another free diagnostic exam. So this is a practice exam. It's a full-length practice exam. It's the exact same thing you're going to see on the real day, on the real test day. This is this just tests your content knowledge. So it's different tests based on different subjects to find out what your deficiencies are in specific areas. So I recommend taking these as well by next week. So to review the quick sheets. So I included quick sheets in this week's email as well. So these are the quick sheets. So I included one for chemistry, organic chemistry, and physics. So these essentially summarize all the content you need to know in these specific areas. There's no quick sheet for biology because biology is too broad. Like, so it's too broad, there's too much information on biology, so you can't like summarize it on the sheet. So, your goal should be to memorize everything on these quick sheets within the next month. Because then you can have like a realistic, you can realistically approach practice exams because you have like a basic foundation of knowledge. You have a sufficient foundation of knowledge to like attempt practice exams. So that would be my goal, to memorize everything on these 3 quick sheets for physics, chemistry, and organic chemistry over the next month.